On the evening of October 12, 2019, the small town of Hollowbrook settled into its usual quiet rhythm. The streets were nearly empty as the last of the autumn sunlight faded behind the trees, casting long shadows over the sidewalks. Lena Voss, a 28-year-old bookstore clerk, had finished her shift at Pages & Prose just after 6 p.m., waving goodbye to her coworker before stepping out into the crisp evening air. She was known for her predictable habits, always taking the same route home, stopping only to pick up her favorite herbal tea from the corner market before locking herself inside her cozy one-bedroom apartment by 7:30. But that night, something broke the routine. Lena never made it home. At first, no one noticed anything unusual. It wasn't until the next morning when her boss, concerned by her uncharacteristic no-show, called her phone repeatedly with no answer. By midday, a worried friend drove to Lena's apartment and found her door unlocked, her belongings untouched. Her keys still hung on the hook by the entrance. Her phone sat charging on the nightstand. A half-drunk mug of tea, long gone cold, rested on the kitchen counter. Everything was in its place, except for Lena. Police were called, and the initial search turned up no signs of a struggle. No broken locks, no scuff marks, no evidence that anyone else had been inside. The only detail that stood out was a suitcase tucked beneath her bed, partially packed with clothes, toiletries, and a folded map of Central America. It looked as though she had been preparing to leave in a hurry, but there was no note, no explanation, no hint of where she might have been going. Friends and family insisted Lena wasn't the type to just disappear. She had plans, a book club meeting the following week, a dentist appointment she'd reminded herself about on the fridge calendar. She had even texted a friend earlier that day about meeting for coffee over the weekend. Nothing suggested she was unhappy, afraid, or planning to run. As days turned into weeks, the investigation stalled. Security cameras from nearby businesses showed Lena leaving work, walking in the direction of her apartment, then vanishing just 2 blocks from her building. There was no footage of her entering any stores, no sightings of her talking to anyone suspicious. It was as if she had simply dissolved into the air. Rumors began to spread. Some whispered that Lena had been involved in something dangerous, a secret relationship, a debt, a deal gone wrong. Others wondered if she had staged her own disappearance, though no one could imagine why. Then, 6 months later, a break in the case would turn everything upside down. A bank teller in a town over 200 miles away reported recognizing Lena from missing posters after a woman matching her description withdrew a large sum of cash from an account under a different name. The withdrawal had taken place 2 days after Lena vanished. Suddenly, the quiet bookstore clerk's disappearance wasn't just a mystery, it was a carefully constructed lie. And the truth was far more unsettling than anyone could have guessed. The discovery of Lena's secret bank account sent shockwaves through the Hollowbrook Police Department. What had initially seemed like a straightforward missing persons case now spiraled into something far more complex. Detectives combed through her financial records, uncovering a trail of transactions that painted a picture of a woman leading a double life. The account, opened under the alias Elise Carter, showed deposits and withdrawals dating back 3 years, long before her disappearance. Large sums of money moved in and out, never staying long enough to draw attention. The most unsettling detail? The final withdrawal, made in a town 200 miles away, occurred 2 days after Lena was last seen in Hollowbrook. Fingerprints lifted from the bank's counter confirmed it was really her. But why would Lena, a woman who lived modestly on a bookstore clerk's salary, need a hidden account? And why had she waited until after vanishing to access it? Detectives turned to her laptop, hoping for answers. What they found only deepened the mystery. Buried in her browsing history were searches for offshore banking, fake identification, and emergency escape routes. Even more troubling were the encrypted messages sent to an unnamed recipient in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. The last one, time-stamped just hours before she left work that final day, read, *, they know. I have to go. *, the messages were impossible to trace, sent through a secure, self-deleting platform, but they suggested Lena had been anticipating danger. Had she been involved in something illegal? Blackmailed? Running from someone? Her friends and family insisted the idea was absurd. The Lena they knew was quiet, bookish, the kind of person who returned lost wallets and volunteered at the library. But the evidence didn't lie. Then came another twist. A forensic accountant, reviewing the secret account's transactions, noticed a pattern. Every deposit matched the timing of a major cybercrime reported in financial news. Data breaches, corporate hacks, even a high-profile ransomware attack, each coincided with a sudden influx of cash into Lena's alias. The amounts weren't random, either. They were precise, calculated, as if payment for services rendered. Had Lena been a hacker? A whistleblower? A pawn in a much larger game? Detectives widened their search, pulling security footage from every ATM withdrawal linked to the account. In one grainy clip, Lena, wearing a hoodie and sunglasses, stood stiffly at the machine, her eyes darting around as if expecting to be watched. In another, taken a week before she vanished, she withdrew cash alongside a figure in a dark coat, their face deliberately turned away from the camera. The most chilling discovery, however, came from her apartment. Re-examining the half-packed suitcase, investigators found a false bottom. Hidden beneath the lining was a burner phone, a passport-sized photo of a woman who wasn't Lena, and a slip of paper with coordinates scribbled in hurried handwriting. The location, when mapped, led to a remote private airstrip known for uncharted flights. Someone had been helping her. Someone had been waiting. And whatever Lena was caught up in, it was clear she hadn't just disappeared. She'd been preparing to run for a long time. The coordinates in Lena's suitcase led investigators to a private airstrip owned by a shell company with no obvious ties to her, until a background check revealed one name buried in the paperwork: Daniel Mercer. A reclusive tech millionaire with a reputation for eccentricity, Mercer had made his fortune in cybersecurity before suddenly stepping away from the public eye years earlier. His name meant nothing to Lena's friends or family, but when detectives pulled her phone records, they found 3 brief calls to a number registered to Mercer's holding company in the month before she vanished. Each call lasted less than 30 seconds. No voicemails, no texts, just digital breadcrumbs leading to a man who claimed he'd never heard of her. Mercer's estate, a sprawling compound surrounded by high walls and surveillance cameras, told a different story. When police arrived with a warrant, they were met not by Mercer himself, but by a team of lawyers who insisted their client was abroad. Yet inside the property's vault, a sleek, climate-controlled room hidden behind a false bookshelf, investigators found Lena's real passport tucked between stacks of cash and encrypted hard drives. Next to it lay a first-class plane ticket to Belize, dated for the afternoon of October 12th. The flight had never been boarded. The discovery raised more questions than answers. If Mercer had helped Lena disappear, why keep her passport? Was she supposed to meet him in Belize? Had something gone wrong? Detectives pushed for an interview, but Mercer's lawyers stonewalled them, citing client confidentiality. Then, just as authorities were preparing to escalate their efforts, the unthinkable happened. Mercer was found dead in his Manhattan penthouse, a single gunshot wound to the head. A hastily typed suicide note on his computer read, "I won't be their puppet anymore." The scene was almost too perfect, the gun positioned just so, no signs of struggle, security footage showing Mercer entering alone hours earlier. But forensics noticed inconsistencies. The angle of the wound didn't match his dominant hand. The keyboard showed traces of a cleaning agent, as if someone had wiped it down. Most tellingly, Mercer's latest project, a controversial AI designed to track financial fraud, had been wiped from his servers the night before his death. A deeper dive into Mercer's business dealings revealed a web of offshore accounts and shadowy contracts with governments and private firms. One file, recovered from a backup drive, contained a folder labeled LV, Lena's initials. Inside were surveillance photos of her taken over the past year, screenshots of her encrypted messages, and a contract for asset extraction services with a 7-figure payout. The pieces began to form a disturbing picture. Mercer hadn't just known Lena. He'd been watching her, paying her, and in the end, someone had made sure neither of them could talk. But about what? And who stood to gain from silencing them both? The answers, investigators suspected, lay in the one thing Mercer hadn't been able to erase: the woman who might still be out there, running not just from her past, but from the truth itself. The anonymous tip arrived in the dead of night, an encrypted email sent directly to the lead detective's inbox. Attached were files that sent shockwaves through the investigation. Internal documents from Mercer's company detailing a sprawling operation known as Project Janus. The files revealed Mercer hadn't just been tracking financial fraud, he'd been orchestrating it. His AI system was designed to hack into offshore accounts, siphon funds, and fabricate digital trails, all while leaving no trace of the theft. But the most explosive revelation was buried in a subfolder. Lena Voss had been working undercover as a white-hat hacker, feeding Mercer's crimes to an unnamed watchdog group. The hacker who leaked the files claimed Lena had discovered Mercer's endgame, not just stealing money, but manipulating stock markets and destabilizing entire currencies. When she threatened to expose him, Mercer turned her into a scapegoat, framing her as the mastermind while erasing his own digital fingerprints. The coordinates in her suitcase weren't for an escape. They marked a drop point where she was supposed to deliver evidence to a journalist. But Mercer's people got there first. Police re-examined the security footage from the airstrip. Enhanced imaging revealed a black SUV arriving minutes before Lena's scheduled flight. Two figures emerged, scanning the area before one pulled out a phone and shook their head. No confrontation. No struggle. Just disappointment. The implication was clear. Lena had never shown up. Then came the photo. A tourist in Buenos Aires had uploaded a vacation album to social media, and in the background of one shot, blurred but unmistakable, stood a woman with Lena's posture, her auburn hair now dyed jet black. The timestamp placed the image nearly a year after her disappearance. Authorities rushed to verify it, but facial recognition software threw back a baffling result. Match probability, 48%. The features were Lena's, but the algorithm flagged inconsistencies: a slightly wider jawline, a scar above the eyebrow that hadn't been there before. Forensic analysts compared the image to Lena's childhood photos and uncovered something even stranger. The woman in Buenos Aires shared Lena's bone structure, but her earlobes were subtly different, a genetic variation only possible if she were a twin. Digging through sealed adoption records, investigators found the truth. Lena had been born as one of two identical sisters. Her twin, named Eva, had been given up at birth due to family financial strain and raised overseas. The pieces snapped together. Mercer hadn't just been using Lena. He'd been blackmailing her with the existence of the sister she never knew. Eva, it turned out, had been working as a data analyst in Singapore, unaware of her connection to Lena until Mercer's people tracked her down. The photo in Buenos Aires? That was Eva, lured into hiding under the guise of protection. And Lena, realizing the danger, had abandoned her own escape to draw Mercer's attention away from her sister. But one question remained: if the woman in Argentina was Eva, where was Lena now? The answer would lie in the one place no one had thought to look. Not in the digital trails or the shadowy deals, but in the words of a 12-year-old diary, hidden where all the best secrets are kept, in plain sight. The diary was tucked beneath a floorboard in Lena's childhood bedroom, its pages filled with the looping cursive of an 11-year-old girl. Most entries were ordinary: schoolyard crushes, fights with her parents, dreams of traveling the world. But midway through the journal, one passage stood out: * Mom and Dad were crying last night. I heard them say, the other one, and we had no choice. I think maybe I had a sister once, and they gave her away. * Forensic handwriting analysis confirmed Lena had revisited this page multiple times as an adult. The edges were worn, the paper slightly warped from dried tear stains. Detectives tracked down Lena's elderly parents, who finally confessed under pressure. There had been a twin. Born prematurely, the family could only afford one child's medical bills. Eva was adopted through a closed private arrangement, all records destroyed. Lena had discovered the truth at 16 when she found adoption paperwork in a locked filing cabinet. She'd spent years secretly searching, hiring amateur genealogists, and even hacking adoption databases, a trail that eventually led her to Mercer. Because Mercer hadn't just stumbled upon Eva. He'd created the trail. Forensic accountants uncovered payments he'd made to a Singaporean clinic where Eva had undergone emergency surgery years earlier. Surgery funded by an anonymous benefactor. Mercer had been watching both sisters long before he recruited Lena, weaving them into his scheme as perfect patsies. Two identical women, one a hacker, the other a data analyst, their skill sets mirroring the dual facets of his operation. But Lena had outplayed him. Security footage from a Berlin train station, dated 3 weeks after Mercer's death, showed a figure in a nurse's uniform pausing at a locker. Inside that locker, police found a USB drive containing the real Project Janus files. Not just the financial crimes, but proof Mercer had been selling the AI to foreign intelligence agencies. The footage was too grainy to confirm it was Lena, but the method was hers, a classic dead drop, just like the coordinates in her suitcase. The final clue came from Eva herself. Tracked down in Chile, living under a new identity, she revealed Lena had contacted her once, a voice note sent through an encrypted app the night she disappeared. "If you're hearing this, I couldn't get to you in time," Lena's voice whispered. Asterisk, "but I made sure they'll never use either of us again. Look in the place where we begin." Asterisk. Eva didn't understand the message until investigators took her to the sisters' birthplace, the now abandoned hospital where they'd been delivered. Beneath a loose tile in the maternity ward, they found a rusted safe deposit box. Inside lay a single slip of paper with the coordinates of a Swiss bank vault and a key taped to the back. The vault contained enough evidence to bring down Mercer's entire network. But of Lena, there was no trace. No body. No sightings. Just a last bank withdrawal in Casablanca 2 days before the Berlin drop. Enough cash to vanish forever. The official report lists Lena Voss as a missing person. But in the intelligence community, they tell a different story. Of a woman who sacrificed her life twice. First by erasing herself, then by walking into the dark so her sister could finally step into the light. As for the truth, maybe some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Maybe they're just meant to keep us wondering. Asterisk, like and subscribe for part 2, because this isn't over yet. Asterisk.